My name is Justin Betts. I'm the content editor at the Founder Institute, and I'm here today with Charlie Chandra. He's the CEO of DotX, an impact FinTech startup space based in Jakarta, and they're providing payroll solutions for companies whose workers are unbanked. Charlie Chandra, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Dustin. I really appreciate your invitation for today.
Yeah, so before we dive into your company, DotX, can you tell us first just a little bit about yourself or your startup story? You know, what were your experiences, professional, personal, that led you to founding this FinTech focused on workers without access to a bank account?
Sure. So I've owned an IT outsourcing company for over 20 years. And my other passion has always been banking. Yet in my country, Indonesia, half of the population don't have a bank account. So they still get paid in cash. They borrow money from loan sharks, and they use loan sharks use social media intimidation. One taxi driver committed suicide for just over a $36 loan. So I've created DotX to help the unbanked become financially educated, more educated, and financially inclusive.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great by way of introduction. I'm a little bit familiar with DotX as an FI portfolio company, but for those who are watching and have never heard of it before, please give us kind of your short pitch. What is DotX?
Sure. So my company DotX is a payroll solution. So workers without a bank account can receive salaries, and they can make banking transactions using a mobile app. With DotX, they can enjoy all the banking services without having to open a bank account.
Perfect. Yeah, really concise pitch, and we'll dive into kind of those details. But I guess so first, to sort of tease apart the problem a little bit, maybe some people have never heard the word unbanked before. Talk to us about the kind of scope of those challenges that you're solving for. I think you mentioned like half of workers in Indonesia are unbanked. What are those challenges? And then similarly, I think there's also challenges associated with the companies who have to pay their workers in cash. So can you kind of talk to us about all of those problems?
Absolutely. So for those who doesn't know, unbanked is a term that is used for people who don't have a bank account. So they're still using cash on a daily basis. Now, where I live here, Indonesia, we have a population of 260 million people. Half are unbanked, they don't have a bank account. And about 60 million unbanked are working, but they own a mobile phone, they have a smartphone, but they're still getting paid in cash. So the challenge is, how do we force them to open a bank account? And the answer is you can't. And our method is through Payroll. Everyone is automatically given access to a shared bank account, so they can use all the banking services without having to open an account.
Perfect. I love that kind of entry point of Payroll for the 60 million workers that you described who have the smartphone but don't have the bank account. So yeah, the Payroll entry kind of point makes a lot of sense.
Yes, and for employers, it's obviously much easier to wire the money than paying cash. I mean, my wife used to work in Payroll. She and 4 others would go to the bank and they withdraw cash. I get very nervous about it when they do it each time. They would transport the cash, count it, distribute it. Some companies hire security guards, and the security guard gets robbed, right? So they get, it's crazy. So this is something that would save the employer a lot of money.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, safety is definitely a major concern when you're handling large amounts of cash. Very interesting. So I guess in contrast, tell us a little bit about the user experience through DotX. What is it like for the employer, first signing up and beginning the payroll process, and then maybe talk to us a little bit about what the employee's experience is like as well when they come onto the product after the employer signs up.
Sure. So for the employer side, it's really easy. The fastest way is to send us a spreadsheet with a list of mobile numbers, names, and the amount of payment. Then the employer transfers one lump sum. We then distribute the payments to each of the employees using the mobile number as the account number. So that's from the employer side, really fast and really easy. Now, from the employee side, they are registered by the employer. So each employee is registered by the employer. Then all they have to do is download the app, do an ID verification and a face verification. Then they can start to immediately withdraw the money from any ATMs, or they can transfer the money using the app and pay their bills using the app.
Perfect. Yeah, it sounds really easy for your employers in Indonesia to get onto the platform. So that's really great. Awesome. Next area I want to ask you about is impact. I called you an impact fintech earlier. Founder Institute. We have this For Progress initiative where we have an accessible framework for it's targeted for even early stage startups to define what we call an impact key performance indicator or an IKPI. That's like aligned with one of the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But I'm curious about how you, as a founder of this fintech company, are thinking about your own company's social impact today. It seems like it's very much at the core of your business.
Yes, so we are an impact for-profit company. Having a bank account is considered crucial to reducing poverty. Only 69% of adults globally have a bank account. So that's another 1.7 billion adults globally who are unbanked, that don't have a bank account. But 2/3 of them have a mobile phone, which could help them access financial services in a massive scale. And having access to a bank account means access to loans, that they can open a small business. So it really does drive economic growth as well as financial inclusion.
Yeah. As you mentioned, it just enables people to do things that there might be other, as you mentioned, like I guess without like a credit score is how it would be, at least in the US with the big credit rating agencies. But all of these other things kind of follow from having that bank account as the first step, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there any other ways? I mean, you mentioned, I guess, is time savings or cash savings, like, do they save money versus obviously you mentioned you use the term loan shark as sort of the alternative. Can you talk a little bit about the savings and like time or money as well?
Yeah. So for the worker side, now they don't actually get an individual bank account as such because opening a bank account requires a minimum minimum amount of deposit. They need to maintain a minimum balance each month. So what we've done is we've opened one single bank account that is shared with all our users. This means that they don't have to go to a bank, they don't have to open a bank account, but they still can use all the banking services, including applying for credit. Our bank partner will accept this as proof of income. They can unlock low interest rates. They can borrow money to set up a small business. They can get a mortgage. Without this, Justin, they would be paying an interest rate of 24% per month from non-bank lenders. That's like 288% per year of interest. So I'm confident that our solution will help the unbanked tremendously. And I hope that they do use us as a stepping stone and will someday have enough money to open their own bank account.
Perfect. Yeah, those interest rates are definitely in the predatory level when you talk about how that compounds just within 1 year. So yeah, I'm sure there's a ton of savings that are realized through coming onto the platform through their employer. And they do have unique debit cards though, even though it's sort of a shared bank account, right? Like every person receives just like you would for an individual account. Yeah.
So we have two ways of withdrawing for users to withdraw money. The first method is a cardless withdrawal, where the app will issue a one-time PIN. They just go to the ATM and put in the phone number and that one-time PIN, and it will disperse the money. Or for an additional fee, they can get an ATM card.
Got it. Yeah, that one-time thing, that's something I've never personally done as a user, so that's very interesting. But I'm sure it's pretty simple and easy. So cool. I want to ask you next to go out on a limb. It's always a little to make a prediction. Just thinking into the future, it seems like these kind of challenger banks, like FinTech is one of these areas that it seems like there is a lot of things changing. But I mean, 5 years from now, what are your predictions for big changes that are coming, whether it's in specifically payroll or how people, send and receive money, or more broadly, how FinTech solutions will meaningfully create new value for consumers? Do you have any vision for where that's going?
Sure. Neobanks, digital banking, it's all very interesting topic. It's a hot topic at the moment, right? I think 5 years time, mobile penetration will be 100%, and digital banking will make it easier for people to open bank accounts, definitely. However, what's interesting, Dustin, is that in the Philippines, for example, only 35% of adults have a bank account. but internet penetration is some 70%, and mobile penetration is over 100%. How could that be? Everyone has mobile phones, smartphones, but only 35% have a bank account. So that's an example that there's, you just can't force people to open a bank account. No one can force them. But if payroll is transferred to their mobile phone number, and all they have to do is just go to the ATM or download the app and get the money out, then we've completely removed the friction of opening a bank account. And only FinTech can do this.
Yeah, so much more frictionless than whatever they were having to do before through a cash payroll service. Yeah, it just sounds like a lot easier. And so the prediction is basically like, look, there's this, we're only at 30-some% right now, but there's 100% mobile penetration. So like, these people are gonna come, they're going to stop being unbanked, right? I mean, eventually people are going to adopt this because of the difference in friction, as you said.
Yeah.
That's great. You've obviously done a huge amount to build DotX to where it is today. I believe you have your Indonesian deposit and lending licenses and like some banking partnerships. That's a lot of progress. What are some of the big challenges that you feel you've overcome as a founder in building this company? I'm especially interested in these licenses for FinTech companies and how that works. Was that a huge challenge or not so much, or were there bigger challenges?
Regulations and working with banks is always a challenge, but the challenge is just time. It just takes time. My biggest challenge, surprisingly, is the pitch deck. Doing the pitch deck is a nightmare. It's really hard. I think I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours into putting a 5-minute pitch deck, because a 5-minute pitch deck is everything about your business, right? And you need to really think it through. And having the right people and the right advice, the right feedback is just critical. Initially, when I started, like doing the pitch deck was really hard because it's not just about presentation, it's putting all the pieces of your business together.
Yeah. Well, the pitch that you recently gave at the Founder Showcase was really, really strong. So we'll put a link to that like in the comments after this live stream's over, so people can go and watch one of your really recent pitches, which was really strong. And you had a great deck with visual aids that we don't have here right now. So at any rate, you've definitely made a huge amount of progress on that front as well. So yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
What advice would you offer for an early stage or aspiring FinTech or impact entrepreneur that's at the very earliest stages, just getting started? Is there anything you wish you knew way back, when, a couple of years ago, I guess, when you just got started? And
Yeah, absolutely. When I got started, I was by myself because I was really afraid of sharing the idea with people, and that was a big mistake. The best thing I did was probably telling as many people as I could about my business, getting their feedback. You don't want to be telling your competitors, right? I mean, you don't want to be approaching similar businesses and ask for their feedback. No, but you want to join a community or a club or an accelerator or something, because there's a team of people that can just support you, and that really makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's great advice, I think, for almost any founder, because that's definitely one thing that we say is to not keep it all bottled up. You have to be able to, if you have some secret sauce, you have to be able to talk about it in some way that you're not spilling the secret sauce. But yeah, that's really good advice. You definitely have to get feedback. So great. Last question I have for you here is just, to tell us where DotX is headed next. Are there any, final news or updates to share with the FI community, or possibly any asks for the audience who might be watching today?
Sure. We're considered early stage, so we're in the process of integrating our app with our bank partner, and that is scheduled to launch in about 2 or 3 months. And I'm currently fundraising, so I'm timing it with the launch of our app. I'm raising $500,000, and I'm happy to announce that half is already committed by investors.
Fantastic. Okay, so if people are interested in getting in on this funding round, they can reach out to you through the website. It's dotx.id.
Yes.
For those listening, we put it in the link there too. But this has been really interesting, learning about how these technologies are changing payroll and how social impact can be delivered through mobile banking. And yeah, we're all really looking forward to keeping up with DotX at the Founder Institute and where you're headed next. But Charlie, Chandra, thanks so much again for joining us today for this interview.
Thank you, Dustin. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.